will leave you speechless what Baba Vanga predicted for the US for 2025. The future whispers to those who dare to listen. In a time when uncertainty looms over every horizon, one voice from the past refuses to fade. Baba Vanga, the blind Bulgarian mystic whose haunting prophecies have both terrified and fascinated the world. Her startling accuracy with events like 9/11 and Brexit has left even the harshest skeptics unsettled. But now, her visions for the United States in 2025 carry a warning so severe it could shake the nation to its core, from looming economic turmoil to political storms unlike anything in living memory. Could this be the year her most unsettling predictions come true? You're watching The Journey of Wisdom, and what you're about to hear may change the way you see the future forever. Number 1. Baba Vanga and the Prophecy. Baba Vanga, the legendary Bulgarian mystic often called the Nostradamus of the Balkans, has held the world in a strange and powerful fascination for decades. Blind since childhood after a violent storm changed the course of her life, she claimed this loss of sight unlocked an extraordinary vision, one that reached far beyond her own lifetime. Her name has since been tied to predictions that dance on the edge between impossible fantasy and unsettling reality. From foreseeing the collapse of great powers to warning of natural disasters and revolutionary leaps in technology, her words have traveled across generations, sparking both awe and controversy. Some see in her prophecies an almost supernatural accuracy, pointing to events that once seemed far-fetched, yet unfolded with eerie similarity. Others dismiss them as coincidences, shaped and reshaped over time to fit whatever is happening in the world. But whether you believe she truly saw the future or not, one thing is certain: her legacy refuses to fade. And now, here we are, in 2025, the year that so many of her followers have been watching for, dissecting every word she was believed to have spoken. Her prophecies for the United States this year are among the most talked about, whispered in both curiosity and concern. Interpretations suggest a time of deep challenges, economic tremors that could shake prosperity to its core, political divisions that might cut deeper than ever, and environmental tests that could push resilience to its limits. These are not easy possibilities to hear. They stir questions we'd rather not ask. Are these events inevitable, or are they warnings meant to wake us up before it's too late? Some insist her history of accurate predictions makes them impossible to ignore. Others argue her words have always been vague, open to so many readings that they fit whatever the times demand. This clash between faith and doubt is exactly why her name still ignites debate, especially now, when the stakes feel higher than ever. Because the fascination with Baba Vanga is not just about whether she was right, it's about what her visions say about us. About our fears of losing stability, of seeing unity crumble, of facing a planet that's becoming harder to live on. For Americans, her warnings hit especially close to home. They remind us how quickly comfort can dissolve, how fragile the systems we rely on truly are, and how history has a way of repeating itself when lessons are ignored. And so, the question in 2025 is no longer, will these things happen? But, are we already stepping into them? Perhaps the greatest power of her prophecies is not in predicting every detail of the future, but in forcing us to stop, think, and maybe, just maybe, change course before the story plays out exactly as foretold. Number 2. Major economic collapse. Baba Vanga's visions have often stirred both curiosity and caution, and her alleged prediction for the United States in 2025 speaks of a severe financial storm, a crisis that could ripple through every corner of the economy. She foresaw a sharp stock market plunge, mass layoffs, banks under strain, and households struggling to stay afloat. While such prophecies may sound mystical, the forces that could make them real are grounded in economic realities we can already see taking shape. The US now carries a federal debt exceeding $31 trillion, a burden that devours more of the national budget in interest payments each year, leaving less room for swift action when trouble hits. If a shock were to arrive, the government's response could be hampered, forcing cuts at the very time spending might be most needed. On top of this, inflation, though easing in some areas, remains sticky in essentials like housing, energy, and food. Supply chains still bear scars from the pandemic years, and each new disruption makes prices harder to tame. Higher interest rates, introduced to fight inflation, can become their own kind of chokehold. Mortgages grow costlier, credit tightens, and both consumers and small businesses find borrowing out of reach. Sectors like housing and commercial real estate, already sensitive to interest changes, can quickly falter, while corporate debt loads and the opaque world of shadow banking can magnify any downturn into a cascade. It's a chain reaction. Markets stumble, funding dries up, businesses cut costs and jobs, incomes fall, demand shrinks, and the cycle feeds back into deeper losses and public strain. Households may see savings drained, retirement accounts shrink, and loans denied, while companies cancel projects and default rates climb. Inequality could widen, political tensions flare, and protests emerge where joblessness bites hardest. And because America is so deeply connected to the global economy, the shockwaves would travel emerging markets, squeezed by a strong dollar, US imports slowing, and foreign investments shrinking. History offers stark lessons. In the 1930s, policy missteps like early tightening, allowing bank failures, and closing off trade deepened the Great Depression. In 2008, swift and coordinated action, liquidity backstops, fiscal support, and crisis resolution plans prevented a free fall. The clear truth is that in any crisis, credibility, speed, and scale of response decide whether the economy bends or breaks. As the Buddha once said, "In the confrontation between the stream and the rock, the stream always wins not through strength, but by perseverance." That wisdom applies here. Perseverance means preparedness, clear communication, and timely action, rather than allowing fear or indecision to harden into disaster. For us living through such uncertain times, the lesson is not to be paralyzed by prediction, but to strengthen our own resilience, managing personal finances with care, reducing unnecessary debt, keeping skills adaptable, and building community ties. No matter how vast the storm, those who cultivate patience, awareness, and adaptability are best positioned to navigate it. In modern life, we are so often pulled into the rush of spending, consuming, and reacting to headlines. Yet a crisis, real or predicted, reminds us of the value of mindful choices. Economic cycles will rise and fall, but if we ground ourselves in foresight, compassion, and wise action, we can turn even turbulent years into opportunities for growth and solidarity. As the old Zen proverb says, "The obstacle is the path," meaning that what threatens us can also teach us. Whether Baba Vanga's vision unfolds exactly as told or not, the call to strengthen our foundations in policy, in institutions, and in our personal lives is one we cannot afford to ignore. In doing so, we prepare not just to survive 2025, but to meet whatever follows with steadiness and clarity. If you've stayed with us this far, you're already uncovering the astonishing truths behind Baba Vanga's predictions for the US in 2025. Comment below with Speechless 2025 to show you're ready to explore these mind-shaping revelations. Don't click away, there's more ahead that could completely change the way you see the future. Stay until the end to witness the full scope of what's coming. Number 3. Environmental catastrophe. Now, let me take you to something that might send a chill down your spine, because this is where Baba Vanga's prediction for the United States in 2025 takes a very serious turn. She spoke of a large-scale natural disaster so severe that it would push local systems beyond their breaking point and force the entire nation to respond. And while we can't say with certainty what shape such a disaster might take, the possibilities when you start thinking about them are both real and deeply unsettling. Picture, for a moment, a Category 5 hurricane roaring into the Gulf Coast or slamming the Atlantic shoreline, the kind that drives walls of water into cities, brings record-breaking rainfall, shuts down ports and refineries, and leaves entire neighborhoods in ruins. Or consider the sudden violence of a mega-earthquake striking one of America's major fault lines, whether along the west coast or in the heart of the country, sending shockwaves that liquefy the ground, snap bridges like twigs, rupture pipelines, and plunge millions into days, weeks, or even months without power or clean water. Then there's the terrifying possibility of a wildfire so vast and relentless that it sweeps across the western states, fueled by months of heat and drought, consuming entire communities, turning skies orange, choking the air across multiple states, and putting such strain on the power grid that rolling blackouts become the norm. Or imagine a stalled weather system dumping unending rain over the Midwest, turning rivers into walls of water that spill over levees, drown farmland, destroy towns, and cripple the rail and freight routes that keep America's supply chains moving. These aren't just wild guesses, they are scenarios rooted in patterns we're already seeing. The truth is, our climate is warmer now than it was just decades ago, and that warmth changes everything. Hotter oceans feed stronger storms. Hotter air holds more moisture, which means heavier downpours when the skies finally open. Longer dry seasons turn forests into tinderboxes, and then, almost without warning, those same regions can swing from drought to catastrophic flooding. The risks don't stay in one place. Either America's dense coastal cities, the homes tucked into the wildland urban edges of the West, the towns sitting behind aging levees in the Midwest, all of them carry vulnerabilities we already know about. And yet, many of our systems are so interconnected and fragile that when one part fails, others start to unravel quickly. If the grid goes down, water treatment plants stall, hospitals run on borrowed time, and the supply chain that delivers food and medicine starts to falter. Now think about the human cost. We're talking about lives lost, people injured, and communities uprooted overnight. Families might find themselves displaced for months, sometimes years, with the psychological toll, stress, anxiety, depression, lingering long after the disaster fades from the news cycle. Economically, the price tag would be staggering. Homes and infrastructure reduced to rubble, ports shut down, energy production halted, farmland ruined, and factories idle. And the effects wouldn't stop there. When one region's economy stalls, it sends shockwaves across the country through disrupted supply chains and higher costs for basic goods. Insurance companies might retreat entirely from high-risk zones, leaving families to shoulder more of the burden themselves. Governments, local, state and federal, would face massive spikes in disaster spending, pushing already strained budgets to their limits. Health and environmental impacts would be everywhere. Smoke from wildfires aggravating asthma and heart conditions hundreds of miles away, floodwaters carrying dangerous bacteria into drinking supplies, mold spreading in homes that can't be repaired quickly, and entire ecosystems taking years, if not decades, to recover. And in the bigger picture, these disasters constrain national security and social stability. Emergency services stretch to breaking point, uneven recovery fueling resentment between communities, and a rise in climate migration as people flee regions that become too dangerous or too costly to live in. But here's where history gives us a crucial lesson. Speed, clarity, and coordination save lives. The difference between chaos and survival often comes down to whether warnings are issued early enough, whether evacuation orders are decisive, and whether communication systems work seamlessly across agencies. It's also about accepting that the hazards we face now aren't the same as the ones we designed for decades ago. If we build higher and stronger levees, enforce tougher building codes, rethink where and how we develop land in wildfire zones, and create microgrids that can keep essential services running even when the main grid fails, we can reduce the worst impacts. And the smartest investments are the ones made before disaster strikes, restoring wetlands to absorb storm surges, clearing excess vegetation to slow wildfires, upgrading levees, and stockpiling critical supplies. These steps cut both recovery time and costs. We also have to be ready for disasters that stack on top of each other, like a hurricane that also triggers a chemical spill, or extreme heat that arrives during a season of heavy wildfire smoke. That means having cross-sector plans in place and making sure our logistics are redundant enough to function even when one link in the chain breaks. Number 4. Escalating US-Russia tensions. Baba Vanga's prophecy for 2025 includes a chilling vision: an escalation in tensions between the United States and Russia, a situation that may not necessarily erupt into a full-scale war, but could unfold through dangerous layers of proxy conflicts, relentless cyber attacks, and strategic military posturing designed to keep the world perpetually on edge. Even today, we can already see the threads of this tension woven into global events. The US continues to supply Ukraine with military aid, advanced weapons, intelligence support, and economic sanctions meant to raise the price of Russia's aggression, all while reinforcing Ukraine's ability to defend itself. In response, Moscow has sharpened its narrative, presenting the US and NATO as the central villains, rallying its citizens with claims of existential threats, and using that rhetoric to justify both its military buildup and tighter domestic control. Meanwhile, Russia's growing partnerships with China and Iran, spanning political, military, and economic ties, signal the emergence of a hardened rival bloc that threatens to undermine Western influence and reshape global power dynamics in ways we haven't seen since the Cold War. The pathways toward escalation are numerous and, in some cases, frighteningly plausible. One wrong move at the margins, a close aerial intercept, a tense naval encounter, or a strike too close to a sensitive border could quickly spiral into a cycle of retaliation that neither side intended, but both feel compelled to pursue. Cyber warfare poses another unpredictable risk, with attacks on critical infrastructure, communications satellites, or military command systems blurring the lines between provocation and outright aggression, and leaving leaders with limited time and options to respond. Even more dangerous is the ambiguity surrounding the origin of certain attacks, missiles, drones, or acts of sabotage, where both sides may dispute who was responsible, leaving little political space for de-escalation. Add to this the economic battlefield, where sanctions and counter-sanctions can cut deep into vital industries, fuel a siege mentality, and push both nations to adopt more extreme measures. Beyond Europe, proxy flashpoints could emerge in regions like the Middle East or the Arctic, where direct confrontation is less visible, but the stakes are just as high, and where plausible deniability gives aggressors dangerous freedom to act. The ripple effects of such tensions would be felt across the globe. The risk of direct confrontation, though still relatively low, remains ever present, particularly when armed forces operate in close proximity under intense time pressure. A single accident or misjudgment could ignite a crisis with far-reaching consequences. Global markets would not be spared. Energy and grain prices could swing wildly, insurance and shipping costs could skyrocket, and governments might be forced to divert budgets toward defense spending at the expense of domestic priorities. Meanwhile, Existing arms control agreements could crumble further, removing critical safeguards that once kept competition in check. For alliances like NATO or partnerships in the Indo-Pacific, the challenge would be to maintain a strong deterrent posture without triggering the very escalation they seek to avoid. Neutral nations might choose to hedge their bets, shifting their trade and financial relationships in ways that could redraw the economic map. And, hovering over all of this, the shadow of information warfare would grow darker, with disinformation campaigns and election interference sowing division within societies, making it harder for governments to respond with unity or clarity. If you're wondering how to spot the early signs that such a confrontation is worsening, watch for specific indicators. A sudden change in the pace or scale of Western weapons deliveries, shifts in Russian military doctrine, or unusual troop movements and exercises designed to send a message. Large-scale cyber incidents, especially those publicly attributed to state actors, could be another warning. Moves to expand sanctions, circumvention networks, or to weaponize vital commodities like energy or food supplies would signal a deepening economic war. And perhaps most telling of all, a breakdown in quiet, behind-the-scenes communication channels between Washington and Moscow, those rare but essential lifelines that can diffuse a crisis before it explodes, would be a dangerous sign indeed. Still, the prophecy does not have to be destiny. There are ways to manage and even reduce these risks. Clear and consistent red lines, combined with a credible defensive posture, can deter miscalculation. Reliable communication channels between militaries, backed by protocols to prevent incidents in the air, at sea, in cyberspace, and even in space itself, can keep accidents from spiraling out of control. Economic measures should be designed to target the aggressor without causing unnecessary harm to civilians or triggering countermeasures that deepen hostility. And, perhaps most critically, renewed agreements on transparency, cyber norms, and strategic stability, no matter how limited in scope, could serve as guardrails against the worst outcomes. Ultimately, Baba Vanga's vision hints at open conflict, but the more likely reality may be an entrenched confrontation punctuated by dangerous flare-ups. Whether 2025 becomes the year of rupture or of a tense but managed stalemate will depend on the discipline of leaders, the strength of alliances, and the quiet but vital machinery of diplomacy. For everyday people, the lesson is clear. Stay informed, remain critical of the information you consume, and remember that the health of democracy and stability often depends on the vigilance and resilience of its citizens. The world may be in a precarious place, but history shows that foresight, preparation, and steady hands can keep even the most volatile situations from reaching the point of no return. You've just glimpsed a fraction of Baba Vanga's shocking vision for the US in 2025. Type "Future Unlocked" in the comments if you're ready to face what lies ahead. Keep watching. What's coming next might just be the most unbelievable part of all. Number 5. Technological transformation. You are about to hear a message that many say Baba Vanga predicted for 2025, not to scare you, but to help you see the opportunity within change. A year where technology doesn't come as a big bang, but as a steady wave that ripples through everyday life, reshaping the way you work, move, receive care, and connect. The question is, how will you meet that wave with fear or with wisdom and compassion? In the Vanga framing, 2025 brings breakthroughs that stack on top of each other and finally reach everyday scale, and you can already feel it in key places. In medicine, AI-assisted diagnostics and triage shorten the time it takes to figure out what's wrong, while hospitals lean on predictive models to plan capacity, cut readmissions, and tailor treatment. In transport and logistics, smarter routing, driver-assist fleets, and carefully limited self-driving on fixed routes at ports, warehouses, and mining sites reduce accidents and shave costs. In manufacturing, vision systems and robots quietly take on inspection and repetitive tasks, improving quality, uptime, and making shorter local supply runs real again. In the back offices of every industry, claims, invoices, and compliance begin to run semi-autonomously, so human roles can shift toward the kinds of work machines can't do well: exception handling, true customer care, and the judgment calls that require heart. On creative teams, co-pilot tools lift the throughput of coders, designers, marketers, and analysts, compressing project timelines so ideas move faster from spark to ship. You'll also see space stop feeling distant and start feeling operational. Reusable rockets lower launch costs, while more frequent missions support lunar programs, satellite constellations, and small pilots of in-space manufacturing. Earth observation and communications payloads expand precision agriculture, disaster response, and rural connectivity, bringing services to places long left out. And right here on the ground, hyperfast networks, NDI, 5G plus backbones, private networks, and edge computing push real-time analytics into factories, hospitals, and campuses. AR, VR moves from show and tell to actual work, remote maintenance with hands-free guidance, surgical training that reduces risk, classroom labs that let students practice safely, and collaborative design that brings dispersed teams together as if they shared a room. Why does this matter to your life? Because when cycles of iteration get faster and defects get fewer, productivity rises. When supply chains are more flexible, resilience grows. When telehealth, language tools, and adaptive interfaces expand access, more people can participate. When reliable automation assists, fewer workplace injuries happen and fewer cars crash. And when AI speeds up materials science, drug discovery, and climate modeling, we find answers to problems that have been stuck for years. What could that unlock in your community, your family, your own health? But let's stay honest. The second-order risks are real, and they touch each of us. Larger digital attack surfaces from hospitals to power grids raise the cost of cybersecurity failures and ransomware. How do you think we should balance speed with safety? Routine roles will shrink, and unless reskilling is timely, affordable, and tied to real jobs, wage gaps may widen. What new skill could you start learning now that both excites you and serves others? Ubiquitous sensors and data-hungry models put pressure on privacy, consent, and due process. What data of yours deserves a firm boundary, and have you set it? Proprietary models, compute, and datasets can concentrate power in a few companies, dampening competition and slowing innovation. How can we ask for open standards and fair access without stifling invention? Unequal access is a moral hazard. If rural and low-income communities don't get last-mile build-out and affordable devices, the benefits pool in the same places as before. What's one concrete way you could support inclusion where you live? For the upside to outweigh the downside, governance must be as thoughtful as the gadgets are clever. That means safety by design, with audited models, real fail-safes for autonomous systems, and red team testing wherever stakes are high. It means keeping a human in the loop for decisions with serious consequences: medicine, justice, public benefits, critical infrastructure, so responsibility doesn't vanish into a black box. It means clear data rights and transparency, with honest consent, deletion options, plain language explanations, and independent oversight for sensitive cases. It means skills and mobility through portable training credits, employer-backed apprenticeships, and real incentives that help people move into new roles without losing dignity or income. And it means open standards, interoperability to avoid lock-in, and pro-competitive access to public data and research compute, so the next great idea isn't gated by who owns the biggest server farm. As we hold this picture, let's keep one line front and center. The prophecy sees sweeping technological change. The grounded view is a compounding wave. Gains will come fastest, where leaders pair deployment with safety, skills, and inclusion. If 2025 is pivotal, it's because choices about governance, not just gadgets, decide whether transformation feels empowering or extractive. So I ask you, if change is certain, what intention will you bring to it? If tools are powerful, how will you use them to do good, not do bad? If the future is being coded in real time, what values will you push upstream? Kindness, clarity, fairness. Your response matters because transformation is not just an engineering problem, it's a human practice of attention and care. Let's end with simple, practical lessons you can carry into your week. Choose tools that help you serve others and reduce harm. Keep humans in charge where stakes are high, especially in health, justice, and essential services. Invest in your learning now, one relevant skill at a time, so you ride the wave rather than get knocked over by it. Protect your privacy and ask for transparency, because dignity begins with consent. Stand for inclusion by supporting access in the places that are hardest to reach. Number 6. Political upheaval. You're about to hear a bold claim linked to Baba Vanga's name, and I want to speak to you directly, clearly, and calmly about what it could mean for you. Within this framing, the United States in 2025 faces a period of political strain where institutions are tested, norms feel thinner, and leadership contests turn unusually heated. What does that stir in you when you hear it? Fear or curiosity, worry or resolve? Let's unpack it in simple terms and keep our feet on the ground. The center of American politics has been shrinking as people cluster into like-minded groups across geography, media, and culture, making compromise harder and pushing the tone toward us versus them. Do you notice that in your social feeds or conversations with friends and family? Added to that is a rising distrust of institutions, Congress, the courts, major news outlets, even election systems. So when someone loud and outside the system shows up, many feel drawn to the promise of a clean break. Have you felt that pull, or do you feel the need for steadier hands on the wheel? Fundraising and attention have also shifted to influencers and decentralized networks, so parties struggle to keep discipline, and the loudest, most maximalist positions often get the most oxygen. How do you decide which voices to reward with your attention and time? Meanwhile, governance has been leaning on brinkmanship standoffs over budgets and debt limits, close elections, and contested certifications, so crisis mode can start to feel normal even when it shouldn't. That raises the temperature on everyone's nerves. How does that constant urgency affect your ability to think clearly and be patient with people you disagree with? In this environment, several pathways are plausible and can overlap. An outsider could break through by rallying disillusioned voters via alternative media and either take over a major party from the inside or mount a serious third-force bid that drags the national agenda in new directions. A major party could split, with ideological wings peeling off or regional coalitions reshuffling, creating short-term instability and strange new alliances. A cycle of escalated protests could swell around contentious elections, high-stakes court rulings, or flashpoint policing incidents leading to mass demonstrations, counter-mobilizations, targeted strikes, and sit-ins that test local officials and public safety resources. There could also be intense institutional confrontations, more impeachments, investigations, emergency powers, and state-federal legal fights that clog normal governing and feed narratives that nothing is legitimate. Which of these paths do you think would most challenge your community, and what would help your neighborhood stay steady if emotions run high? The impacts of such turbulence are real. Policy can become a ping-pong match, with businesses and states planning on shorter timelines because big shifts happen via executive actions and court rulings instead of lasting legislation. Different states can drift further apart on elections, education, and environmental rules, making it harder to coordinate during national shocks. Information disorder can spread when competing reality frames, pushed by viral algorithms, turn rumor into fact before anyone checks it. Social cohesion takes a hit when baseline tension rises and intimidation or sporadic violence threatens officials and election workers, creating the need for extra safeguards. In your own life, how do you pause and verify before you share? And how do you protect your well-being while staying informed? History helps us keep perspective here, because realignments are messy before they're clarifying. The 1852nd, 1892nd, and 1962nd all saw fierce factional fights that eventually produced new coalitions and fresh policy agendas, but the road was bumpy. And remember, institutions can absorb shocks if rules are respected. Transparent processes, credible election administration, and timely court decisions have contained disputes before. When actors defy the rules or delay outcomes, instability lingers. So, what's the sober bottom line for you and me right now? The prophecy imagines outright political chaos, but the more grounded risk is a turbulent transition, a stretch of outsider ascendancy, party reshuffling, and recurring street-level mobilization that stress tests institutions. Whether 2025 marks rupture or rough passage will hinge on leaders' restraint, the integrity of electoral processes, and the system's capacity to deliver visible results in the face of distrust. Where do you locate your own agency within that reality? What everyday habits help you reduce heat rather than add to it? And how can you be both principled and patient? As a personal compass, consider these takeaways you can act on today. Practice clear-eyed awareness by checking sources and pausing before you react. Cultivate steady speech by choosing words that illuminate rather than inflame, especially online. Widen your circle by listening across differences with curiosity, not contempt. Support fair process by respecting lawful outcomes and encouraging transparency rather than rumor. Care for your community by looking out for neighbors, election workers, and local institutions that keep daily life running. Invest in long horizons by focusing on constructive, local contributions where you can see real results. Anchor yourself in calm through breathing, walks in nature, simple routines so you can meet uncertainty with dignity and compassion. Which of these lessons speaks to you most right now, and what's one small step you'll take this week to embody it? The future may be uncertain, but the choices we make today shape the path ahead. Whether Baba Vanga's visions come true or remain as warnings, their real power lies in reminding us to stay aware, stay prepared, and act with wisdom. If you found value in this journey through her predictions, help us share it with others. Like this video, subscribe to The Journey of Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming explorations. Together, let's keep seeking clarity in a world full of questions.